There is a temptation in our most fragile moments to believe that silence means absence, that God's delay is a denial, that wickedness thrives unchecked while righteousness is left to wither. But let me tell you something that the deceivers of this world do not want you to know. There is no darkness thick enough to hide the wicked from the eyes of God. He sees, he knows, and justice is coming. The wheels of divine judgment turn with a precision that no mortal can comprehend. Just because you do not see them moving does not mean they stand still. God is never in a hurry, but he is never late. The wicked may build their fortresses believing themselves untouchable, but the higher they climb in arrogance, the greater the fall that awaits them. Their laughter today is not a sign of their victory, but the calm before the storm. For the God of justice does not forget. Perhaps you have been patient, waiting for an apology that never came, hoping for remorse that never surfaced. You have seen those who slandered you thrive, those who betrayed you prosper, and those who mocked your kindness walk as though they have conquered the world. But hear me when I say this, their days are numbered. What they sow they will reap. What they built on deceit will crumble beneath their feet. Do you remember the great empires of old, the kings who declared themselves invincible? Where are they now? Buried beneath the dust of time, their names fading into oblivion, their power reduced to whispers in history books. What man exalts in pride, God humbles in justice. And those who have harmed you, thinking themselves beyond consequence, will soon learn a lesson they cannot escape. Justice is not always swift, but it is always certain. Some may believe they have escaped it, that their cruelty has been forgotten. They mistake God's patience for permission, his silence for surrender. But the scriptures remind us, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. This is not an empty promise, it is a divine decree. God's justice is not like human revenge. It does not come in anger or haste, nor does it require your hands to carry it out. His justice is perfect, measured, and inescapable. When he moves, he does so in a way that leaves no doubt. He exposes what was hidden, brings down what was raised in pride, and restores what was unjustly taken. The wicked will see that the very things they built on suffering will become their own downfall. But do not let your heart be consumed by watching for their downfall. The best revenge is not seeing them suffer, it is seeing yourself rise. While they are haunted by the weight of their actions, you will be lifted. While they scramble to escape the consequences, you will walk in peace. While their world collapses, yours will flourish. That is the justice of God, not only to bring down the wicked, but to lift up the righteous. Do not fear. Do not doubt. If God has allowed you to endure suffering, it is not because he has forsaken you, but because he is refining you. Every tear you have shed has been counted. Every pain you have carried has been seen. And when the time comes, he will not merely punish the wicked, he will restore you beyond what you have lost. If you have been waiting, if your heart has been restless, wondering when justice will come, pay attention. The signs are already appearing. The unseen hand of God is moving. First sign, their peace begins to crumble. There is something unseen but undeniable about the way God orchestrates justice. It does not always begin with public exposure or immediate downfall. Instead, it often starts with something far more profound: the loss of peace. The same individuals who once moved through life with arrogance, believing they had escaped the consequences of their actions, suddenly find themselves wrestling with a growing sense of unease. The scriptures remind us there is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked. Isaiah 48:22. No matter how much they try to convince the world and even themselves that they are untouchable, their spirit will begin to betray them. Their minds become restless, their hearts grow heavy, and the comfort they once enjoyed starts slipping through their fingers like sand. At first, they may not even recognize what is happening. They may continue their routine, pretending that all is well, but deep within, their soul begins to stir. The very things that once brought them satisfaction, wealth, relationships, achievements now seem hollow. They smile in public, but behind closed doors they toss and turn, unable to find rest. The guilt of their actions becomes an invisible weight on their chest, pressing down harder with each passing day. The loss of peace is often the first sign that God's justice is at work. Unlike human punishment, which strikes swiftly and visibly, divine justice often works from within. God does not merely bring external consequences, he troubles the conscience. He disrupts their sleep. He plants an unshakable awareness of their wrongdoing deep in their soul. Even if they deny it, they know. Proverbs 28:1 declares, The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. This means that long before judgment arrives, fear grips their hearts. They look over their shoulders, expecting retaliation that has not yet come. They interpret silence as danger. Paranoia becomes their companion. The peace they once took for granted is shattered, and every shadow feels like a threat. Have you ever noticed how those who wrong you begin to behave differently, even before anything happens? They become defensive without reason, distant without explanation. They may lash out at others, become irritable, or suddenly withdraw from the world. That is because their spirit is troubled. King David, a man after God's own heart, knew what it was like to carry the weight of guilt. When he sinned, he cried out in Psalm 38:3-4, "Because of your wrath there is no health in my body. There is no soundness in my bones because of my sin. My guilt has overwhelmed me like a burden too heavy to bear." This is what happens to those who hurt you. The moment they wounded you, they thought they were victorious, that their actions had no consequences. But God saw everything. And now, He is removing their inner peace. No wealth, no distractions, no power can restore what God has taken away. They may try to ignore it, drown it in entertainment, or numb it with vices, but peace is a gift that only God gives, and when He withdraws it, no one can reclaim it. If you have been waiting for justice, watch their actions. Look for the signs not in their words but in their demeanor. If their steps seem heavier, their laughter forced, their presence uneasy, know that justice has already begun. Second sign: opportunities start slipping from their hands. When God begins to bring justice, He does not merely remove their peace, He begins to take away the very things that once elevated them. The doors that once opened for them with ease suddenly begin to close. The paths they walked effortlessly now feel like an uphill battle. The book of Job tells us He makes nations great, and He destroys them. He enlarges nations and leads them away. Job 12:23. God alone determines who rises and who falls. When He allows someone to prosper, no man can stand in their way. But when He decides to humble someone, no effort, no strategy, no connection can prevent their downfall. At first they may dismiss it as bad luck. They will tell themselves this is just a rough season. But as time passes, they will begin to realize something deeper is at work. The promotions they once counted on are given to others. The alliances they relied upon start to crumble. The influence they once held begins to fade. Remember Pharaoh, the mighty ruler of Egypt. He believed he was untouchable. He had wealth, power, and armies at his command. But when God decided that his time of oppression had come to an end, not even the strength of his kingdom could save him. Every plague, every sign was a warning, but Pharaoh ignored them, believing that his position was secure, and in the end he lost everything. So it is with those who have wronged you. They think they can continue walking through life untouched, but their time is coming. The jobs they depended on will start slipping from their hands. The investments they made will begin to fail. The recognition they once received will be given to someone else, and they will have no answer for why it is happening. Psalm 37:35-36 gives us this wisdom. I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a luxuriant native tree. But he soon passed away and was no more. Though I looked for him, he could not be found. Opportunities will dry up. Their influence will fade, and the same people who once admired them will begin to distance themselves. God does not allow injustice to thrive forever. You may not see it immediately, but pay attention. When doors begin to close for those who hurt you, when what they built begins to collapse, know that God is at work. Their hands will grasp, but they will find nothing. This is the justice of the Lord, not only to take away their peace, but to strip them of the things they valued above righteousness. What was taken from you will be restored, and what they gained at your expense will be removed. Justice is not only about punishment, it is about restoring balance. And when you see their downfall begin, know that your elevation is near. Each of these signs is a warning and a reminder God is watching and He is moving. Do not doubt His justice. What is lost will be restored. What was done in secret will be exposed. And those who rose through wickedness will surely fall. Let them grasp at their fading opportunities, but you, stand firm. God is preparing something greater for you. Third sign, the truth about their deception is exposed. There is a universal law written by the hand of God himself: whatever is hidden in darkness must eventually come to light. No matter how carefully a person crafts a lie, no matter how deeply they bury their deception, the truth will always rise. It is not a question of if, it is only a matter of when. The scriptures make it clear, for nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. For a time it may seem like the liars and deceivers are winning. They manipulate, twist the truth, and build their lives upon falsehoods. They take advantage of your kindness, misrepresent your character, and convince others to see you through a distorted lens. And yet they move forward without consequence, or so it appears. But here is where God works in ways beyond human comprehension. He allows deception to run its course so that when it is finally exposed, there is no doubt that it was his hand at work. If justice came too soon, the wicked would have room to deny their guilt. But when they have been given enough time to weave their lies into a web so complex that even they struggle to keep up, God strikes. The very lies they spoke come back to entangle them. The trust they manipulated begins to break. And one by one, their deception is laid bare before the world. They will try to hide, but they will have nowhere left to run. Think of Haman in the book of Esther. He was a man who deceived a king, convinced an entire empire to turn against the innocent, and believed himself untouchable. But when the time was right, God pulled back the curtain. The very gallows he built for someone else became his own destruction. This is the fate of those who scheme in darkness. They may not fall at once. Sometimes the exposure happens in small, steady waves, one secret revealed here, another broken lie there, until suddenly the whole foundation of their deception collapses. God will not allow wickedness to stand forever. When he decides that the moment of truth has come, it will be undeniable. You will begin to notice something shift. People who once believed their lies will start to question them. Those who stood by their side will begin to see inconsistencies. Their credibility will weaken, and their influence will fade. They will panic, scrambling to cover up their tracks, but it will be too late. When God exposes someone, he does it in a way that leaves no room for escape. The same words they once used to destroy others will now be turned against them. The same lies they used to build themselves up will be the very things that tear them down. Proverbs 19:5 warns, "A false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will not go free." It is inevitable. God is already working behind the scenes. The truth will come out, and when it does, they will have no place to hide. Fourth sign, they begin to suffer the same pain they inflicted on others. There is a spiritual law woven into the fabric of creation: what you sow, you will reap. It is not merely a saying, it is a divine principle that governs the universe. Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Galatians 6:7. The pain they inflicted upon you, the betrayal, the rejection, the harm will return to them in a way they never expected. Not because you wished it, not because you sought revenge, but because God is just. He does not allow wickedness to prosper without consequence. For a time they seemed untouchable. They carried on as if nothing had happened, acting as if their actions had no weight. They mocked your suffering, dismissed your cries, and walked away as though they had won. But what they did to you, they will experience in their own lives. Consider Jacob. He deceived his father and his brother, thinking he could escape the consequences. But years later he found himself at the mercy of Laban, who deceived him in the same way. The pain Jacob once inflicted was the pain he was forced to endure. This is how divine justice works. God allows people to feel the weight of their own actions, not to destroy them, but to make them understand. Those who made you feel small will find themselves humiliated. Those who used you will find themselves abandoned. Those who made you cry will cry those same tears. You do not have to seek revenge. You do not have to waste your energy trying to make them pay. God will handle it in a way you never could. You will start to notice the shift. The same circumstances that once crushed you will now come knocking on their door. They will experience the same loneliness, the same betrayal, the same loss. And when it happens, they will remember you. They may not admit it, but they will know deep down that this is not coincidence. This is divine justice unfolding before their eyes. Proverbs 11:8 declares the righteous is delivered from trouble, and it comes to the wicked instead. The suffering they caused will return to them, and it will be a lesson they cannot ignore, not because of you, but because of God. Fifth sign: God lifts you up while they fall into their own traps. There is a moment in divine justice when the tables begin to turn. Not only does God bring judgment upon those who wronged you, but He also lifts you up in front of them. The same people who doubted you, disrespected you, and sought to tear you down will have no choice but to witness your elevation, and they will be powerless to stop it. The scriptures remind us, "The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and He exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor." 1 Samuel 2:7-8. This is how God works. He does not simply remove the wicked, He elevates the righteous. He does not only punish those who plotted against you, He prepares a table before you in their presence. Psalm 23:5. The rise of the righteous and the fall of the wicked are often linked. Those who dug a pit for you will fall into it themselves. Those who laid traps for you will be ensnared by their own schemes. They believed they were setting you up for failure, but in reality they were digging their own downfall. Look at the story of Joseph. His brothers threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and convinced themselves that his dreams were over. But God had other plans. The very road that seemed to lead to his destruction was actually the path to his destiny. Years later, those same brothers stood before him, hungry and desperate, needing help from the man they had tried to erase. God lifted Joseph up while their own actions led them into distress. This is what happens when divine justice unfolds. Those who sought to bring you shame will themselves face disgrace. Those who spread lies about you will be exposed. Those who stole from you will lose what they gained through deception. And here is the most incredible part: you won't even have to fight for it. You won't have to defend yourself. You won't have to beg for opportunities. God Himself will move on your behalf, and the doors that were once closed to you will begin to open. Proverbs 26:27 warns, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." The wicked may believe they have built something unshakable, but when God begins to move, everything they relied upon will collapse beneath them. At first, they may not realize what is happening. They will try to regain control, to restore their influence, to maintain their false reputation. But the same arrogance that led them to attack you will lead to their downfall. The harder they try to hold on, the faster they will fall. Meanwhile, God will be positioning you for something greater. The opportunities they blocked from you will return. The blessings they tried to steal will be given back to you in double measure. And when they look at your life, they will realize nothing they did could stop what God had planned for you. Sixth sign: their relationships begin to break apart. When God begins to bring justice, He does not only strip away material things, He begins to separate the wicked from their alliances. Those who once stood by them will start to walk away. Their friendships will weaken. Their support system will begin to collapse. Why? Because evil is not sustainable. The Bible tells us, "The wise in heart are called discerning, and gracious words promote instruction. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil." Proverbs 16:21-23. People may tolerate wickedness for a time, but eventually even the closest allies of the deceitful will begin to see their true nature. They will realize that the person they trusted is not who they pretended to be. At first, this separation will happen slowly. Their friendships may feel strained. Small conflicts will arise. People who once supported them will become distant. But as time goes on, they may blame others. They may convince themselves that everyone is betraying them. But the truth is, it is God himself who is causing the separation. Look at the story of Saul. He was once a king, favored and powerful. But as he drifted from God, his relationships began to collapse. His own son turned away from him. His soldiers lost trust in him. The very people he relied on began to see his instability. And in the end, he found himself utterly alone. This is the fate of those who harm others and refuse to repent. The same charm that once attracted people will no longer work. The influence they once held will fade. Their name will lose its weight. Have you noticed how some people who once stood boldly in arrogance now move in isolation? That is not a coincidence. It is a sign that their season of false power is ending. God is not only humbling them, he is showing the world who they really are. The friendships they thought were unbreakable will fall apart. The support they relied upon will vanish. And in the silence of their isolation, they will be forced to reflect on the sower. It is at this moment that many of them will realize they are facing the same pain they once inflicted on you. The loneliness they tried to put you through has now come upon them. The betrayal they once used as a weapon has now become their burden to bear. God's justice is not about quick revenge, it is about setting things right. And when relationships start to crumble, it is often a sign that he is tearing down what was built on. Psalm 146 tells us, "Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction." This is why you must not concern yourself with their temporary success. Even if it looks like they are surrounded by people now, wait. Watch how time reveals the truth. Their words may still be loud, but their circle will grow smaller. Their confidence may seem unshaken, but behind the scenes their foundation is cracking. You do not need to fight this battle. God is already moving. And when you see their alliances start to break, when you hear of their relationships collapsing, know that justice is unfolding before your eyes. Seventh sign, they are forced to confront their guilt. There comes a moment when those who have inflicted pain upon others are no longer able to run from the weight of their actions. At first they dismiss the warnings, ignore the signs, and continue their lives as if nothing has happened. But justice is not just about external consequences, it is about what happens within. The most powerful and inescapable judgment comes not from the outside world, but from within their own hearts and minds. God's justice is not always immediate, nor does it always manifest in the ways we expect. But when he moves, it is undeniable. Those who once walked confidently in their deception begin to feel something shift deep within them, something they cannot name at first. But as time passes, they realize that the burden of guilt is growing heavier with each passing day. They may not speak about it. They may not admit it. But it is there. It lingers in their quiet moments, in the stillness of the night, when the distractions of the world can no longer drown out the whispers of their conscience. At first they try to silence it. They busy themselves with work, surround themselves with noise, or throw themselves into relationships and entertainment. But it does not go away. It follows them like a shadow, growing stronger when they are alone. No matter how hard they try to suppress it, the voice within them grows louder. Scripture tells us, "There is no peace for the wicked," Isaiah 48:22. And that is precisely what happens. Their mind, once at ease, is now restless. They may sleep, but they do not rest. They may laugh, but they do not feel joy. Their soul is in turmoil because God does not let the wicked remain comfortable in their wrongdoing. Even if no one else sees it, even if they appear to be moving forward, internally they are unraveling. For a long time they convinced themselves that they did nothing wrong. They justified their actions, twisted the truth, and convinced themselves that you deserved what happened. But the truth cannot be buried forever. It has a way of rising to the surface, and when it does, it will confront them in a way they can no longer deny. They will begin to see the pain they caused, not as a distant memory, but as something alive in the present. They will witness others experiencing the very same suffering they inflicted, and it will strike them differently. The betrayals they once dismissed as necessary will now feel cruel. The words they spoke so carelessly will now echo back at them with new weight. It may come in the form of a conversation where someone unknowingly says something that reminds them of what they did. It may come in the form of a moment of solitude where they are forced to sit with their own thoughts. It may come when they look into the eyes of someone they love and realize for the first time what it means to be on the other side of pain. And in that moment, they will know they were wrong. They will know they cannot undo the past. And worst of all, they will know that nothing they do can erase what has been done. Regret begins to consume them, but regret is not the same as repentance. Some may reach out seeking forgiveness, but not out of true remorse, rather out of a desperate attempt to free themselves from guilt. They will want to apologize, but not because they truly understand the depth of what they did. They will want to be relieved of the burden, to hear that everything is fine, that there are no hard feelings. But forgiveness does not erase consequence. God's justice ensures that every action has a weight, and that weight cannot simply be lifted by a few words. Others will not apologize at all. Instead, they will become defensive, angry even. They will lash out at those around them, unable to handle the reality of their own guilt. They will blame circumstances, shift responsibility onto others, and try to convince themselves that they had no choice. But deep down they will know, the more they fight it, the heavier it will become. They will feel the pressure of their own conscience pressing against them, demanding to be acknowledged, and as time goes on, they will realize that they are trapped in a prison of their own making. Cain, after killing his brother Abel, did not face immediate external punishment. No army came for him, no earthly consequences fell upon him right away. But when God confronted him, Cain's response was not anger, nor was it arrogance. It was despair. He cried out, "My punishment is more than I can bear." Genesis 4:13, not because of physical suffering, but because he could not escape the weight of his own guilt. He knew from that moment on that he would carry it for the rest of his days. This is what happens when divine justice unfolds. It is not always about watching someone lose everything in an instant. Sometimes the greatest consequence is the realization that they have lost something far greater, their own peace. May still have their wealth, their reputation, their outward success, but it will feel hollow. They will go through the motions, trying to convince themselves that nothing is wrong, but nothing will feel the same. God ensures that those who do evil must eventually come face to face with their own reflection. They will remember the moments when they laughed at your pain, when they turned their back on you in your time of need, when they spoke words they knew would wound you. And the worst part, they will not be able to go back. They will not be able to erase what was said, undo what was done, or restore what was broken. The guilt will linger, growing stronger with time, because God will not let them forget. At first, they may try to convince themselves that they can make up for it in other ways. They may turn to charity, hoping that good deeds will somehow balance out the past. They may try to be better to others, believing that kindness in the present will erase cruelty from the past. But no matter what they do, they will always return to the same realization. Nothing they do now can undo what has already been done. And that is when the true weight of justice sets in. They will understand that what they took from you they can never give back. They will feel the emptiness of knowing that what they destroyed can never be fully restored. And they will live with that awareness day after day, no matter how much time passes. God does not need to send fire from the heavens or cause the earth to swallow them whole. He does not need to strip them of everything they have. All he has to do is remove their ability to escape the truth. When that happens, when they are left alone with nothing but their own thoughts, they will finally know what it means to face judgment. Justice does not always come in the way we expect, nor does it always come at the time we desire. But make no mistake, it always comes. The hands of God do not remain still forever. He sees the wounds inflicted in secret, the betrayals whispered behind closed doors, and the pain carried in silence. He is not blind to injustice, nor is he indifferent to your suffering. If you have endured hardship at the hands of another, if you have been wronged, abandoned, deceived, or hurt, know this: God has not forgotten you. You may have spent nights questioning, wondering if those who harmed you will ever face the weight of their actions. You may have watched them continue their lives as if nothing happened, and perhaps you have even doubted whether justice will ever be served. But justice is not always loud. Sometimes it moves in the unseen, in the quiet unraveling of a person's peace, in the breaking apart of the life they built on deceit, in the slow and inescapable confrontation with their own guilt. The very things they once took for granted, their confidence, their influence, their relationships, begin to slip through their fingers. The world may not notice at first, but they will feel it. The weight of what they have done will rest upon them, growing heavier with time, and when that moment comes, they will finally understand that no one can escape the justice of God. As long as I am living, as long as I am breathing, as long as I am looking at the heavens themselves, the great art, somehow spiritually, principally, morally. Yes, there's a damn good reason. But this message is not just about them. It is about you. It is about what happens to the one who was wronged, the one who endured suffering yet remained faithful. While their world begins to shake, yours is being rebuilt. While they struggle under the weight of their own actions, God is lifting you up. While they face the consequences of their choices, He is restoring everything you lost and more. Do not waste your energy watching for their downfall. Your victory is not in their destruction, it is in your rising. God's justice is not just about bringing down the wicked, it is about exalting the righteous. And if you remain faithful, if you trust in His timing, you will see the day when everything that was taken from you is restored. You will see the day when God turns your suffering into strength, your loss into blessing, and your tears into joy. So hold on, keep walking in righteousness, keep trusting in His justice. The wicked may seem to prosper for a moment, but their time is short, and your time of restoration is near. May you walk in faith, knowing that God is always on the side of truth. May you find peace in His justice, and may your heart be lifted with the assurance that no evil goes unanswered. Your story is not over. God is still writing it, and the best is yet to come.